Hello everyone, Shane1288 here with another perfectly unscientific gaming review, and today we're taking a look at the Grissom Light Science Vessel, otherwise known as the Tier 6 Oberth. This ship has become quite a meme in the community for quite some time, and it's finally here this week in Star Trek Online. The ship, unlike many others that have been added recently, can be acquired from the C-Store or your Fleet Starbase, so you don't need to shell out huge amounts of money in order to pick this ship up if it's something that you're interested in. The Fleet version picks up an extra science console slot. This ship, in its Fleet configuration, features 5 science consoles, 4 engineering consoles, 2 tactical consoles, and in my case, since I upgraded it to Tier 6X, a universal console. The ship also comes with a Commander Science / Temporal seat, a Lieutenant Commander Science seat, a Lieutenant Commander Engineering seat, a Lieutenant Tactical seat, and an Ensign Universal seat. Now, in terms of what this ship comes with, if you purchase on the C-Store in terms of trait and console, the trait itself is called By the Book. It increases the duration of your anomalies by 2 seconds whenever activating an anomaly or any temporal bridge officer power. The anomalies included are ionic turbulence, chronometric inversion field, timeline collapse, very cold in space, Tychon's Rift, subspace vortex, and gravity well. Now, the console, which we're not using in this particular build that comes with this ship, is called the Phase Space Membrane. It boosts your power transfer rate by 57% and shield resistance by 5%, and its active click ability will drain your auxiliary power by 20 for each second that the power is up, for a maximum of 20 seconds, and it will shut down if your power hits 0. It also caps your power transfer rate at 250% and grants immunity to physical and kinetic damage. It also boosts all other resistances from 20 to 400, all damage resistance, and this increases for the time it's active. But the reason most people are going to be using this is that it gives a 20 to 400% bonus all damage boost to torpedo weapons that increases each second that this is up. Now, that means that looking at this ship, this is itself a side ship, but its console is probably best used on a torpedo build. That's not what we're doing here. We're doing a heavy science exotic particle generator build, and let's just have a quick look at what we're using here. We're using the 2-piece Discovery reputation set for the torpedo that it offers when under torpedo spread and chemocyte-laced weaponry. We got a huge amount of damage out of the dark matter quantum. And the second piece of that is the phaser wide-angle dual beam bank, and this is because whenever we crit with either of these weapons, we gain an extra 1% critical severity buff for 20 seconds, and this stacks up to 25 times, so that's quite a bit. We also have the particle emission plasma torpedo, which is a staple of most science exotic builds. It leaves a plasma cloud around when it explodes. Then in the back, we are running the ultimate modified plasma omni beam bank, because this gives us a boost to our critical chance ship-wide, and whenever we crit, it also debuffs enemies' plasma resistance rating, which you'll see why that's important in just a moment. Plus, when you combine that with the plasma cloud, that debuff works there. But we'll talk about the second thing when we get to the consoles. Then we're running 2 mines in the background, the Nukara web mines and the Black Ops mine launcher. The reason we're running these 2 is that they both have an ability to hold a target in place, which I guess I'll just jump down into this console right now. This is from the Tholian web spinner array. Whenever we are fighting against a held target, we gain a 50% bonus damage boost. I'll talk more about the active ability when we go through the science consoles. This one comes from the most recent event or the second most recent event that was run. Then for our deflector, impulse, and warp engines, we are running the 4-piece revolutionary combat set, and that's because in addition to these nice bonuses here for exotic particle generator crit severity and just in general being a nice set that was available to be picked up last year for mission reward, we get the huge mycelial weapon lands, which hit for quite a huge number, upwards of almost 2 million in our Parse. We also get a boost to critical chance damage, and this is something that you'll probably fire off once per run, but hey, we like seeing big numbers pop up, and you see 128k here. It's much, much higher than that. Our secondary deflector is a deteriorating secondary deflector, rerolled for control and EPG, and it boosts damage whenever we activate our sensor analysis ability. Devices, we got the Kobayashi Maru, which gives us random buffs, Deuterium Surplus, which is an evasive in a can, the Subspace Field Modulator for damage resistance buff, and the Exotical Particle Flood, which is a battery that just increases our exotic particle generator damage. Console-wise, we have the multi-target tractor arrays. This can pull targets closer to you, but it does a lot of damage just whenever used on targets that are in front of you, so it's a fun one to use. There's many other options available to use here if you didn't want to pick this one up, like maybe sensor burnout instead. But in the engineering consoles, we're running the Constriction Anchor, which gives us a 25% bonus exotic damage boost, the Aux Ejection Assembly from either the Kelvin Command Cruiser or the legendary Kelvin Enterprise, the Delphic Tear Generator, which gives us a bonus exotic damage boost and critical severity boost, and then the Tachyokinetic Converter, which is just critical chance and critical severity. Then down here we have the Exotic Particle Field Exciter, which is a 75 EPG boost. And then this is the one I was kind of alluding to here, the Tholian Web Spinner Array, boosts physical damage and control expertise, but it also encases some targets in front of you with a Tholian web that does an immense amount of damage, probably more than it should, but this is a fun console to use just because it puts out so much damage, and it gives us that damage boost against held foes. Then we have the cascading gravimetric disruptions from the Earhart Strikewing Escort, another C-Store ship. If you time this one properly, you can get, at least 10,000 DPS out of it, probably more, depending on your scenario. Then here we have the Plasma Storm module from the Maquis Raider, and this is partly why we're running the Ultimate Plasma Omni, because this does a great amount of plasma damage, and whenever we fire and crit at a target, we are debuffing their plasma damage resistance rating. Then we have the Neutronic Eddy Generator. This comes from last year's Ryzian Summer Science Vessel. This console was supposedly nerfed at one point, but just like many things in the anomaly science field, it still does a ton of damage. Then we have the Fakiri Torment Engine, which is a science-based tactical console that gives us a 39.4% increased non-hazard damage over time. It also increases fire, radiation, plasma, and physical damage by a similar amount, and dealing any non-hazard damage over time damage has a 10% chance to deal fire damage, and that's specifically talking about our secondary deflector. Then we have the Bioneural Infusion Circuits, which is just in here being used as a critical severity boost. Bridge Officers Wise, Gravity Well 3, Timeline Collapse 1, Photonic Officer 1, this is for cooldown and buffing exotic damage, but you'll see more in the trait section. Hazard Emitters 1 is a cleanse. Subspace Vortex 1, Charged Particle Burst 1. This is one of two abilities we're using to activate our secondary deflector. Very Cold in Space 3. And Tachyon Beam 1 for our Science Suite. This also activates the secondary deflector. I already talked about our two tactical abilities. Emergency Power to Auxiliary 1 boosts Exotic Particle Generator, and with a trait we're running boosts Exotic Crit Chance and Crit Severity. Let It Go 2. This one I expected to do more. We could honestly swap this out for something else, but that's a topic for another day. And Subspace, or Structural Integrity Collapse 3. I'm actually quite surprised with the way this one works. I've seen it do anywhere from 4K to 12K DPS in some runs that I've did, so it's actually punching above its weight for an engineering ability on a science build. Now, looking at the traits here, resonating payload modifications, debuffs targets when we hit them with our torpedoes, unconventional systems, whenever you use control bridge officer abilities, recharges universal consoles. We could potentially bring up another control in here, like a jam sensors maybe, if we wanted to proc this even more, but I think everything worked out fine in the run you'll see. Terran targeting systems, just a blanket critical severity boost, chance of being slowed down, but that's not an issue in this ship. Inspirational leader, whenever we activate bridge officer abilities, we can gain potentially up to plus 30 in most skills. Context is for kings. If you're running with a tank, this will be a 10% bonus all damage boost, otherwise known as Cat 2 damage. Then we have particle manipulator, which is the linchpin in any exotic particle generator science build. It gives us a 50% critical severity boost and a 30.7% critical hit severity chance for our exotic damage abilities based on our EPG skill, and that's a very key point, based on our EPG. You want to have about 250 EPG to make this trait work well. 300 is probably the highest I'd go. Then we have Adaptive Offense, which is a critical chance boost, but whenever we crit, it's turned into a critical severity boost of 9% over time. Conservation of Energy, which is the Science Captain trait. Whenever we're hit, has a chance to gain 10% bonus damage on exotic powers up to 3 times. And then Fleet Coordinator for flying in a team. We get a top boost of 10% bonus all damage, 2% per teammate. Starship traits, improved Photonic Officer from the Tholian Iktomi to boost our exotic particle generator damage and increase Photonic Officer by 10 seconds. Assimilated Power Conduits from the Tal Shiar Adapted Battlecruiser for a 5% critical chance and 25% critical severity boost for our exotic damage abilities from the Tal Shiar Adapted Battlecruiser. Exotic modulation, I believe, from the Kronos Temporal Dreadnought gives us 20% exotic damage boost whenever using our temporal powers, and this lingers for 15 seconds. Now here's the expensive one, Universal Designs from the Crossfield Refit. Whenever we activate a Universal Console, gives us 2% critical chance and 10% critical severity. You could honestly sub this out for something like Strike from Shadows, a Sea Search trait from the Shran Light Escort. Then we have Spore-Infused Anomalies from the Somerville Intel Science Vessel. Whenever we activate a Science or Intel power, all of our anomalies will put out a burst of electrical damage, and that is our Timeline Collapse, Gravity Well, Subspace Vortex, and Very Cold in Space. And finally, By the Book from this ship, which I already talked about, and this is being procced in this case by Timeline Collapse, Gravity Well, Subspace Vortex, and Very Cold in Space. Granted, we could use this trait better with more temporal powers, but I wanted to slot it on just because it's a new ship, and let's see what its trait can do, and it worked quite well. For Space Reputation, we have Advanced Targeting Systems, which is critical severity from the Dyson Reputation, Critical Chance from the Discovery Reputation in Tyler's Duality, a boost to exotic damage from the Iconian Reputation, critical chance from the Romulan Reputation, and Ox Power Offense from the Nukar Reputation. Then here, for our active space, we're running the Anti-Time Entanglement Singularity, the Deploy Sensor Interference Platform, the Biomolecular Shield Generator, and the Quantum Singularity Manipulation, which is a cloaking device that boosts our EPG, our all science stats for 8 seconds. All right, so moving on from that, this is what the skill tree looks like. It hasn't changed since last time, so just give this a pause if you want to see what it looks like. And same thing for the specializations as well. We're running Temporal and Strategist. Temporal, because it gives us entropic rider, and it also gives us this wonderful plus 50 EPG skill. And we got this kind of oopsie moment where if we go too low in our damage, it will back us up and give us some extra HP. And this one's also very important as well. Entropic amplification, 20% all damage for space damage over time effects. But overall, temporal is a pretty good primary specialization if you're running anything science related. And then secondary is strategist, and the main reason we're running this here, if I can find the icon, is diversionary tactics, which when you use the active ability and we're not threatening, we get a 3% bonus all damage per affected foes times 5, so potentially 15%. And also, where's the other one I like? Extra critical severity and extra critical chance when not threatening. So strategist is pretty good for what we're doing here, since we won't be taking threat most of the time. For duty officers, we have 2 technicians that have a chance of increasing our exotic damage by 25% when activating emergency power to auxiliary. A deflector officer that will reduce the recharge time of all deflector abilities, and yes, this is our tachyon beam and gravity well, so whenever we're firing off tachyon beam, we can reduce the recharge time of our gravity well. Gravimetric scientist to create aftershock gravity wells. You know, these do stack up, and it really does help with our spore-infused anomalies. Chance to placate targets when using charged particle burst. I do this because sometimes I don't always run with a tank, and same reason here. The Xindi biochemist has the ability to reduce threat after activating exotic damage abilities. So with that being said, let's have a look at the run and the parse.
Scanning the nanite trip. Is closing in on the trend. Destroy it.
This are your records. You with us one last year alone, where we will begin assimilating our culture and technology.
Alright, so here we are looking at the parse, and obviously pet damage is very high. This comes from our neutronic eddy, which is the Rysian neutronic eddy generator, timeline collapse, cryonic turbulence, which is very cold in the space. 3, our Badlands cyclone, 19.5K, 10.8 for our anti-time entanglement singularity, and the rift that our mycelio weapon leaves behind at 4.8K. Then, deteriorating deflector, 56.5K, there's the Tholian console, 46k DPS, particle emission plasma clouds, 27k. Our mycelial weapon, we only fired it once, but we did a 2.5 million hit for 23k DPS. Gravity well, 20k. Spore-infused anomalies, 13k. Vortex, 8.6. Vicary Torment, 8.3. Multi-target tractor arrays, I've seen that one higher before. The Delphic Tear. Gravimetric disruptions, once again, low for the tractor arrays and gravimetric disruptions on this run. Low for structural integrity collapse. These can all go higher, and that's in general the theme as the way this run went. This was an average run for me on the ship. It wasn't the highest I've done, and I want to take this point, as I do in most of the recent videos I've done, to just point out that you don't need to do this amount of DPS. 100k DPS is enough for elite content in this game, and advanced and normal can be anything under 100k. So don't feel obligated to push those high numbers. And if you see this build and you like this ship, go for it. And if you're put this together and you say pull 125k, great. If you pull 75k, great. If you pull 30k and you're just learning, great. That's the whole idea behind this, and why we do this here, is that it's a learning experience, and how you can take these things that stack up to so much DPS here and use them as a bedrock for your own gameplay, whether it be in a patrol or anywhere else in game. But that was the run and the parse and the build review. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I love when science ships come out. It lets me do these. So with that being said, we'll be back next time for another perfectly unscientific gaming review. See you then.